Hi guys, my name is Mark Law, creator of Rational Wine, Consult Wine, and 7 Key Wine Concepts. In this video, we'll be talking about the factors used to determine quality in wines. We've come a long way. First, we started off with how a wine is made, vinification. Then we spoke about the environment where a wine is made, viticulture. And then we got into the tasty stuff of aromas and flavors, and then we went behind the scenes to look at the invisible aspects of structure. Now it's time to bring everything together and see how we can use all of these components to finally judge the quality of the wine that's in your glass. Once again, this is going to be heavily based on the WSET's systematic approach to tasting. I will provide some links to you in the description below. Please click through, check them out, have some fun, and let's get started. First, it's important to establish what quality levels there are. You might have read wine reviews on websites or in a magazine using 100-point scales, 20-point scales, or 5-star ratings. There is a time and a place for those systems, but this is not what we are using here. I mean, can you imagine tasting a wine in a glass and thinking, oh yeah, this is an 89-point wine? Or if you're tasting a wine with friends, can you imagine telling them, oh, I think this is a 91-point wine? And that's just not very user-friendly. Instead, we are going to put the wine on one of 5 levels. And from low to high quality, these are poor, acceptable, good, very good, and outstanding. Technically, there is the category of faulty wines for when the wine is actually messed up, but let's talk about that another time. The important thing is it's a lot easier to quickly put the wine into one of these 5 categories, and also in a social context, it's much more natural to speak to your friend and tell them, oh, I think this is a good wine or a very good wine, and for this or that reason, and now let's go into those reasons. There is an acronym that has been passed down to myself and other wine professionals that have been studying intensively, and that is B.L.I.C, B-L-I-C, and this stands for balance, length, intensity, and complexity. There is an extended acronym that I recently came across called TBLICA, and T stands for typicity or typicality, and A stands for ageability. And I've seen other examples where they've added another C and another B, and that stands for concentration and beauty. So you can see how detailed you can actually get if you want to, but for the purposes of this video, I will be focusing on B.L.I.C only. Balance, length, intensity, and complexity. Let's go into them individually and see what they mean. Let's talk about balance. This is the first and simplest part of judging a wine's quality because it's very much a binary scale. Is the wine balanced? Just a simple yes or no. And then you support your answer, you qualify with your reasons. But let's talk about the opposite first. What does it mean when a wine is imbalanced or out of balance? Imagine you're listening to an orchestra, everyone is playing their instrument properly, everyone except for the tuba. And they're playing at double speed, quadruple the volume, and they're not even playing the correct song. Basically, something sticks out. You can think of the wine in your glass in the same fashion. If all the flavors and the structural components are working together, then it's balanced. If something sticks out uncomfortably, then it is out of balance. Have a smell, have a taste. Then think to yourself, is the wine too sweet? Is the acid too high? Are the tannins too astringent if you're drinking a red wine? Is the alcohol too hot? Think back to the structural components and that will help to guide you. And just as important as seeing what sticks out is seeing what is missing. Quite a common example is acidity and when it's low. Remember that acid makes you salivate, freshens your palate, and it gives the wine a sense of vibrancy. In the previous video, my example was cola or lemonade. That disgusting amount of sugar is balanced by a lot of acid. If it did not have that acid, then the cola or the lemonade is going to be very sticky and cloying, basically out of balance. And as a wine example, that's very common. You might come across wines that have a lot of fruit, but it just sits very flat on your palate. And that's because the acidity is very low. Colloquially, you might hear people refer to these wines as fat or flabby, and you can imagine what that might feel like when you hear those words. And if the wine is balanced, then that's fine. Next component, please. The next quality factor is length. Length is also referred to as the finish of the wine. This is another very easy component to judge because you're not trying to juggle a lot of different components like sugar, acid, tannin, alcohol. All you are doing is measuring time. Basically, once you've swallowed the wine, how long does that flavor last on your palate? Because if something tastes good, you want that flavor to last as long as possible. And if it tastes delicious, but it disappears the moment you swallow it, then we call it a short finish. So you can imagine the scale that we might place the length of the wine already. You can have a short finish, medium finish, and long finish, and then minus and plus. I think this is the scale that you've come across before. Now let's talk about the wine's intensity. You can already imagine what this is about. If the wine is delicious, you don't want to work very hard to get those flavors out. You want it to pop out right in front of you. You want the flavors to be very vivid and very easy to get. So if it's a high intensity wine, then that's all it takes to get those aromas and flavors. Yeah. On the other hand, if it's a low intensity wine, you're going to have to really stick your nose in and breathe very hard to get the aromas and flavors. And you can imagine once again, a very similar scale: low, medium, high intensity, and minus and plus. Very simple. Finally, we get to the wine's complexity. You taste the wine and you ask yourself, am I getting just a few flavors or am I getting a lot? For example, if all you taste is lemons and apples, I think we can agree that this is going to be a very simple wine. All you are getting is primary characters and just a bit of citrus and tree fruit at that. On the other hand, if you get grapefruit, orange, red apple, nectarine, apricot, pineapple, dandelions and honeysuckle flowers, maybe a bit of a cinnamon, yogurt, even some mineral tones like wet rocks, you can see the complexity is rising, and the range of primary fruits is much more broad, and we're even moving into secondary and tertiary characters. You can agree that this wine has much higher complexity. And that's just all you have to ask. Is there a lot going on in the wine, or does it seem very one-dimensional? And once again, you can place it on a very similar scale: low, medium, high complexity, minus and plus. That's it. So let's bring all of this together. We have the 5 quality levels: poor, acceptable, good, very good, and outstanding. Now let's take an example of a wine. If the wine is balanced, if the flavors last a very long time, it's got a long finish, if the flavors are highly intense and there are a lot of different flavors in the wine, high complexity, then you're going to find it very hard to argue that that is not an outstanding wine. On the other hand, if the wine is not faulty, but it's not balanced, the flavor disappears quickly, and the flavors are quite weak and there's not a lot of variety, then I think you can agree that that can be judged as a poor wine. So once again, the 4 main components: balance, length, intensity, complexity, B.L.I.C. Use that to help you to recall those factors. And you can kind of see where this is going. If it ticks all those 4 boxes, go ahead, and I think you can comfortably call that an outstanding wine. If it gets 3 out of 4, if it's just missing one element to be truly outstanding, then you can judge it as very good, and so on with the rest of the quality levels. And I want to emphasize that being objective is the key to the exercise. You can dislike a wine and still objectively say that this is an outstanding wine. You can say that, you know, this is not the usual style of wine I enjoy, but I can see its merits, and that's the first step to becoming someone who just likes and dislikes wine, and you're becoming a wine aficionado. That's all I want to talk about in this video. At the beginning, I did mention an extended acronym of TBLICA+CB. I actually got this from a podcast hosted by the Guild of Sommeliers with Master of Wine Nick Jackson. I'll provide the link in the description below with a timestamp, so you can fast forward and have a listen for yourself if you're interested. But basically the extra letters, T was typicity or typicality. Basically, does the wine taste like a typical example of where it's from? A, ageability. Does the wine have the potential to mature and develop extra flavors as time passes? The extra C was concentration, and B was beauty. I think that deserves an entire video of its own. And another thing I would have liked to talk about is price, actually, because the relationship between price and quality might be a bit interesting there. I mean, it's not always the case that a more expensive wine is that much better, so I think I'll talk about that in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please hit like and subscribe and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, please send me an email or a direct message, or leave a comment below and I'll answer you there. Cheers and see you again soon.